This is my top 5 plus a few extra boots of 2022. Out of all the boots that we've cut apart, which are my favorite for each individual categories, we have best value, best built, boot I recommend the most comfortable, best heritage, best wide toe box, best cowboy boot, most popular, my favorite, video, and the most potential. So a few have more than 5, but if you want to check the full videos out, I'll put links to all those videos in the description, all the links to the products in the description. So what should we start with first? Maybe let's start with boots I recommend the most. You know, you get asked a lot of times, like, being the boot guy, what do you recommend? You know, people have different situations that you recommend different types of boots for, but the one that I always end up going back to is the Thorogood mock toe. It's a pretty decent price. It's under $300, I believe. It is traditionally made with the Goodyear welt. It has a really soft sole construction because the wedge sole is really soft. It has fiberboard, which isn't as good as leather, but it's going to be comfortable, and you have that big layer of pour-on foam plus a really thick insole insert in as well. You got the leather counter cover. It checks a lot of the boxes for a really affordable price, almost 0 break-in period, and for a good starter boot, it's good to work in. It's good to wear just as a casual heritage boot, and it's a pretty decent price. So I always just end up recommending the Thorogoods. So next, let's do most comfortable. So we just did a video on these. But the Lems are some of my more comfortable boots. You know, some honorable mentions are like my redback boots that I'm currently wearing. And the one that I always go to when I need a really comfortable boot is the Lems Boulder boot. It's just really flat, really wide, really comfortable, easy to put on. And they just came out with a new version that we just released a video on that has a actual rubber sole on it this time. And they're really comfortable. The other ones that I wear a lot for like comfort would be the Palladium lights, I believe is what they're called. Travel lights. I just bought them because they look cool, but they're just a big foam outsole. They're just really comfortable, and they're really cheap. They're like $100. Next, let's do best wide boots. So Lems are obviously in that group because that's part of why I love them. They have a super wide toe box. But also Keen. Keen is kind of a sleeper in the wide toe box world. You know, you don't always notice that they're really wide because they hide it with some smart paneling and the little toe bumper, but they're really wide and really comfortable. They're kind of like the beefier version of Lems, if I'm being honest. So I always, for people that like wide toe box boots, there's the hiking boots, there's construction boots, there's tons of different options. Obviously, one of the kings of wide toe box, Jim Green, they got a bunch of different options, and they probably have the widest toe box. They're absolutely ridiculously wide. And then the fourth one, Alden's. Even though we've had a little back and forth with liking Alden's, disliking Alden's, some people upset about it, they are a wide toe box boot, and they will accommodate really wide feet. You can get different widths. They're a combination last, and it's a smartly designed last. If you don't know what I mean by smart last, they combine different attributes to make it just as wide as Jim Green, but it doesn't look as wide. So if you want to see a video on that, check out the 5 likes and 15 dislikes of Alden's on the Rose Anvil 2 channel. I'll link that below as well. But all these are really good options for wide toe box boots. Various dress, work, hike, casual, lots of different options. Next, let's do best cowboy boot. The best all-around cowboy boot, I would say, is the Chizos. Because you have that traditionally made boot that accommodates an insole, high-quality materials, full leather heel stack, and yeah, they do it better than Tony Lama. They do it better than pretty much everybody. They are pretty pricey. Even just from quality standpoint, this is still the best cowboy boot, and it's less expensive than the Lucchese's. So that's why it's number 1. Let's do most popular video. So out of all the videos we did this year, the number 1 most popular video by a landslide is, if I can find it on the channel, the Jungle Boot. It has 3.6 million views in just over 6 months. And this Jungle Boot it's a really fun video too, because it combines a lot of the traditionally made techniques with like a mass production of needing a military boot, and it's a really function first boot, and it took 57 years to retire it, and it's just a really interesting boot, and I love making that video, and apparently everyone else really enjoyed the video too, because it has 3.6 million views. Now let's do best built. So out of all the boots we've cut apart, which one is hands down the best built regardless of price? This was a little bit cheeky because it's a collab, but we didn't invent this style of construction. We just liked it, and so we decided to do a collab on it. But I think White's hand sewn boots are pretty well undefeated in overall quality, because Everyone else does like the inside Blake stitch. White's is still hand sewing every single one of these hand sewn boots. And it's a stitch down construction, but they do this really interesting thing with the welt where they reinforce the welt with an extra stitch similar to a Goodyear welt. And I just think it's the most durable and best built boot that we've cut apart on the channel, hands down. If you disagree with that, there's some wiggle room for different brands, but I'd like to hear your explanation on why you don't think this one's the best built. Best value. So best value, if you don't know what value means, let me just look up the value equation just so I don't screw it up and make a fool out of myself. Value equals quality over cost. So basically, how much quality do you get per dollar in whatever boot? That's what value means. So to me, I think the JK300 line is your best value. For under $400, you get basically a Pacific Northwest boot, built boot, with a few small changes. You have like some foam wedge and you have like a rubber slip sole, but for the most part, it's built the exact same. And it's under $400. So per dollar, I think this is your best boot per dollar. And next, let's do best heritage. Like if I were to choose one heritage boot, built well, great value, something that's going to last you a long time, works with lots of different applications, with light work, with outfits, with going on dates, casually, all those different things combined into what is the best heritage boot. I would say that the classic Red Wing 8-inch mock is pretty hard to beat. It's only $300. It's $50 less than their Iron Ranger. 360 degree Goodyear welt, big slab of veg tan for the insole, so it's going to compress the shape of your foot. Leather lining. You know, I think this is the best heritage boot, and it's a very what is the word I'm looking for? Like it's a very iconic boot. Like people will recognize it, like, oh, you got a pair of Red Wings, you know. So I think this is pretty easily the best heritage boot. All things considered, this is a really good one. And that's a very subjective one. You could make an argument either way. Like for instance, like an honorable mention that I almost gave over the Red Wings was just Grant Stone, because Grant Stone offers a lot of the things that are missing in the Red Wing $300 to $400 price range for basically that same $300 to $400 price range. So you're getting a ton more leather on the sole construction, better materials, finer finishing techniques, and there's a lot less corners cut. You know, you've got a full leather veg tan counter. These are pretty hard to beat. The one gripe that people have is that they're made in China. And this is the one brand in the boot world that's really bucking that stigma with terrible things being made in China or cheap things made in China. They're made in China, but they are more finely finished than almost, I would argue, the better finished than any American-made boot that we've cut apart. And then what do we have left? The boot brand with the most potential. This one's kind of another really subjective one, but I think Origin is working on some really interesting things. They have really unique patterning and styling. They're doing really slim, like sole constructions, and they've only been making boots for a few years. And the fact that they're making these boots to this quality for this price, and more importantly, the really, really cool thing about this, and the thing that I think maybe put them over the edge for me for most potential, is they do everything they can to source all the components, including thread, eyelets, everything from the United States. The only piece that's not made in the United States on this entire boot is the leather midsole. And I think they're trying to find one that's made in the United States. So at some point, this boot will be a completely 100% made and manufactured in the United States, made from products, raw materials made in the United States, which is really cool. And then maybe for the final thing is, what video did I enjoy the most? I think I really enjoyed the Japanese World War II boot the most. It was so interesting. It was a very like Japanese way of making a boot, and it was very different from any other boot that we cut apart, because they focus on utility and function first, and that's what informs the unique look and the construction of that boot, because it's really simple. There's only like 5 eyelets. There's like very subtle and small stitching. And the reason I don't have it here is because I sent them to somebody to have a potential collab in the works where they're going to try to recreate that as authentically and as close to the original World War II Japanese boots as possible. And we found someone that's going to be, it's going to be a really cool collab. And it's not official yet, so I can't say too much, but it's going to be cool. So keep your eyes out for that. And that wraps up the top 5, which ended up being like top 10. But I like doing these videos, and we're going to do a bunch more of these, like top 5 boots, top 5 sneakers, top 5 worst of each of those categories, because it's fun to do. And I think it's valid, or it's important information, and it's condensed information. So if you like any of these boots, check out the links in the description. If you want to see the full videos, those will be in the description as well. And thank you guys for everything you do and supporting this channel so that we can get to the point where we've cut apart hundreds of boots and we're able to rank them and choose a top 5. So thank you guys. See ya.